Welcome to your City Commission study session. Please turn off or silence all cell phones during the meeting. Meetings are televised every day on Channel 2 at 6 p.m. at midnight and available for viewing on YouTube. So study session for Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. First up is update on Bird Scooters pilot program.
Penny?
Mrs. Holler.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Today I have a update on the Bird Scooter pilot program for you. Just a quick recap on the pilot project, if you recall. This was a 12-month project, started in April of 2017. This was after the Commission approved the Memorandum of Understanding with Bird Scooters and also adjusted the local ordinances to allow bird scooters to be ridden in the street. State law does regulate scooters like bikes, so they're meant to be ridden in the street just like bikes. Riders must be 18 years old. That does come in the app as a pop-up that you have to affirm that you are 18 before you're allowed to use the app in Leavenworth. And there's 3 ways to contact Bird in case there's any questions. So getting right into the numbers, if you recall, the city did launch a website, an informational website, one, to help people understand how to use bird scooters, what's the proper use. We want to encourage and educate people to use them well. So far, we've had 928 views for the frequently asked questions site for the city. It seems like it has been, it was good advice taken from the experience of other cities that said really try to do a good job of educating people on the proper use. So it seems like that has gone well and been used. And then, there we go, I'll get into some of the statistics. So I know it's always tough when we're looking at a PowerPoint on a large screen, so feel free to ask questions as I go through this if any of the graphs are unclear. The highlight of the program is that there have been 4,428 rides since the program started. I know the data sheet from Bird went out. They put that together about 2 weeks ago, so I just ran the stats again today. It goes through July 4th. So this is the updated data that's available on their website through today. So this is program start. This is a daily trend line, so this is every single day. It starts April 27th when the program started. The last data point is July 4th. Apparently only 35 rides were taken yesterday, so it was a pretty quiet day compared to some of the other days. You'll see really the smallest amount of rides on any given day has been 12, and the highest has been 135. So generally trending that the scooters are getting used. A lot of times the higher use is on the weekends, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday time frame, although that 93 rides data point was Monday, which was Memorial Day. So that gives you a little understanding of the graph. This was just a total rides by week, if that helps put some dates into that same trend line to kind of look at the use has been fairly steady. Although it seems like generally it's gone up. So sort of the first month, there were some dips in the use and days that it wasn't used as frequently. It seems like the whole floor has kind of risen. So they're really getting a good amount of use in the past month of June. 6,239 miles traveled. That's, again, the daily graph through July 4th. Follow similar lines. So when scooters are being used a lot, the miles that they're going to be driven are substantially higher. The average trip on Bird scooters is about 1.25 miles, and the average ride is about 12 minutes. So that doesn't account for, someone could use it for 0.5 mile, someone could use it for 5 miles. Again, these are just some of the averages based on use so far for the first about 2 months of the program. The cost, I know this came up as a question, so I pulled this off the app after I downloaded it onto my phone. It's a $3 minimum, so the minute you activate it, it'll be $3. But really, it's $1 to start and then 39 cents per minute after that. So if you're on the average and it's about a 12-minute ride, that's somewhere between $5 and $6 is what you can expect. Again, if you ride it for longer, that's going to go up, and some might just test it out, try it for a couple blocks, and that should be probably that $3 minimum. So riders, who are using bird scooters in Leavenworth? There's been over 1,200 riders since the program started, and over 1,000 of those were first-time riders. So that means they didn't have the app on their phone, they haven't used it in a previous city. Leavenworth is their first experience using bird scooters. Although you can also see there are some more experienced riders, perhaps folks that have used it in other cities, and then maybe are excited to try it again and navigate through Leavenworth. Although once those first-time riders ride it, there is an average of about 3.5 per ride. So it says not everyone is using this as a novelty and just trying it one time. Some folks actually are using it more often. I know this is going to be kind of hard to see, but this is what's available through the data mapping on the website that I have access to. It's a heat map. So in essence, it's just meant to give us an understanding based on color and frequency of where the rides are starting in Leavenworth. So if I can
Where did you get that map? Bain City and Wadsworth?
I don't know where that comes up.
That's old school.
Yeah, that's really old.
But you can see the
About
curve at
50
the
years
top
old.
is metropolitan, and then the map goes down to Eisenhower, and the boundaries are, we're looking at 20th and the river. So you really kind of see where it's centrally located, where the rides are starting. Similar trends for where the rides are ending. Again, for the most part, it's in that northeast corner. Although if you look carefully and you have great 20/20 vision, you can see, they've been ridden as far as Eisenhower. They've been over as far as 20th Street. So the bird scooters are getting used around town because this is where the rides would end. So this is where if you took the scooter, where the scooter would end up. So kind of giving you an idea of point A to point B. And then, since it was really focused on the downtown, I wanted to try to zoom in on that and give some better information. So you can see it's fairly spread out in the downtown, although mostly in the business district. You can see Shawnee Street on there and blocks around that. Although what's also interesting, when you look at where they start compared to when they end, you can see that changes a little bit. So it actually moves north, which suggests that people are not only using it in the downtown district and the business area, they're actually using it in the residential areas as well for a little bit of micro-transit to get around. So again, that's just kind of a heat map that just gives us a general understanding of where the scooters are being used. So on to the burning questions. What incidents have we had so far? I would say, similar to other cities, we really haven't seen very much. The police department has not reported that they've written any tickets. They haven't had any complaints. It's been relatively quiet on the public safety front. The fire department did report one person experienced broken ankle after falling off their bird scooter. So that's unfortunate. But if I were to run the math, I didn't bother, but 6,000 rides for one broken ankle, would be 0.000 something. So relatively small amount of incidents compared to the number of bird scooter rides. And then complaints and concerns. So Bird let us know that they received about 13 complaints and concerns. So the first thing we try to do is have people contact bird scooters directly. That for us is ideal. That way they're able to act on the information that they get in a timely manner. And our expectation is they're responding to those. So 13 people were able to contact Bird either on the app or via the 800 number or via email. And then the city also received about 10 complaints and concerns. I wouldn't say it's 23 total that contacted the city. It's more likely that at least half that contacted Bird then turned around and contacted the city. Most of them told me that when I spoke to them, so some of them just maybe weren't pleased with the response they got from Bird. But for the most part, I was able to pass the information back to Bird and get it resolved within a couple hours. They do have local contractors that are here regularly. If you see a truck full of Bird scooters, that's the local contractors that have been hired by Bird to come in and place them, address issues like the citizen-provided picture that you see here. Obviously, that's not what we as the city want or what people want to see around town. So we send that to Bird, and they've been responsive.
So Ms. Holler, on the complaints, were the majority of them the same types of complaints? What did that look like?
Give me a second, I'm trying to get, there we go,
Oh,
go to the
sorry.
next slide. So of the 10 complaints, 3 of those were businesses that really didn't like the scooters either being parked in front of their building in general, or it was blocking a sign, blocking ADA accessible parking. So that was really the 3 concerns that I heard. Just general residents called, they just don't like the scooters, they don't want them around the city, or they were parked improperly. Often I would say, can you give me a location so I can address it if there's an issue? Some of the responses, well, I'm not sure there's anything specific, I just don't appreciate seeing them. One rider contacted the city complaining about the cost. Again, I think I mentioned this to the commission before. It was someone who had paid for multiple 18-year-old teenagers to ride them, and I don't know how long they were on there, but apparently they were displeased with the bill they received afterwards. And then did receive 2 notifications about scooters needing to be picked up. So one scooter that I'm aware of ended up on Fort Leavenworth. Fort Leavenworth is not choosing to do a pilot program. So we had to work with Bird Scooter to try to get their local contractor access to post to retrieve that. And I think I alerted the garrison commander, who's aware, and just said, we'll, see if that's something we need to look at further. But it really wasn't anything besides come retrieve the scooter. And then also received one notification that one had ended up in a creek. So again, this is where we would notify Bird, or anyone really can notify Bird and let them know, and we would expect that they would come retrieve that scooter. Did that answer your questions on the complaints that we received?
Some of them called us too. They probably didn't call the city because we just gave them the answer.
Yeah, that probably doesn't include any of our,
Yeah.
Or give them the number.
Yeah.
Question, Ms. Holler.
Yeah,
What was my question?
that was my last slide, so
Can't
yeah,
we-
you're perfect.
Can they geo-fence the post? As, you go on post, it's gonna die.
When I spoke with the garrison commander, I offered if that would be something that they would like us to work with Bird on. He didn't seem to think it was an issue at this time, but he understands that if it becomes an issue, we can absolutely work with Bird to do that, because the purpose of the pilot project was just within the city limits.
Yeah, I'm wondering how'd they get on post?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, they
Proper
have to have a
identification.
landlord.
There's several people
Right.
that work
So
on
I
that. They
don't
don't have
know.
transportation.
Would
They
they
could be.
say anything to them when they pull up to the?
I don't know, because, they're very strict about motorcyclists,
Yeah,
right, and bicyclists. Having, helmets, and motorcyclists have to have, gloves, and they have to have, heavy
Right.
pants, they can't do shorts, stuff like that. And I'm wondering if, there's something that they don't want, but.
There's only one that I'm aware of that's shown up on post,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I don't
perhaps
know how
they've
God
addressed
knows
that.
I heard about that too, but, my neighbor rides a bike up there to take care of her horses every day.
Yeah,
She has to go through that, but of course she just shows her ID and they go on through, so. I
yeah,
just
once you
assumed
got
that
all
was
the
how they got
approvals.
through.
Ms. Holler, thank you for the tracking and the reporting, the extra reporting you put in there. I appreciate that. Could we, moving forward, I think the good measure will be the weekly rides, if we can kind of get that and start tracking that. So you did the daily, you did the weekly and everything, which is great. We're 2 months in, we've got a slight uptick in the trend line. If we could just get, maybe just kind of like that weekly rides, then we can start seeing, because we would expect to see over the next first 2 or 3, 4 months, an uptick in people using it because it's new and everything like that. Just want to track it. I think we'll know more 6 months in, kind of where it's going, if it's leveling off or it's going down. So if you can do that, that'd be great.
But absolutely, I think some of those are the experience that the city of Leavenworth is looking to. What does that look like? Is it seasonal? Is it based on weather? Is it based on gas prices? What's driving the interest in use, or what's driving if they're not being used? So,
Come winter, they may not want to ride them
Right.
so much.
in winter.
Is this correct? There are 190 of them out there now?
It might be a little higher, it's been growing, but yes, that was what Bird reported to me about a week and a half ago.
So it's been growing because,
Of the
why?
usage,
Like
or-
they're dropping them off arbitrarily?
You know, I will use this
Because I wondered that
slide.
too, and you showed that number, I'm like, 190.
Yep. See if I can get this one. It's hard to see, but, so this is the line, the trend line of total rides. What you'll also see on there is the number of Bird scooters. That's what's set in the back in those blue colored columns. So you can see they started with about 50 when the program launched in April of the 28th, and then has gone up
So my question is, yeah, what are they, so we started with how many? Was it 50?
50.
So I guess what's in the agreement that says they're gonna just arbitrarily drop off, when they go straighten them up, they're gonna drop off 5 more? Like, I didn't realize that. So I'm just curious, like, what's that, they can just do it because they want to?
What's in the agreement is the minimum of 50 was required at the launch. We didn't set a maximum. I think in some ways we wanted to ensure they would even provide us with 50 and those would get used. So I think you ask a good question. Is this something that we want to set some sort of reasonable?
So look, you guys are
limitations
using more than
on?
you started, and we also gave you 4 times more now. Anyway, that kind of irritates me. So not your fault or anything. I'm just, oh, well, sure, you're going to get more riders. You start sprinkling them out 4 times as many as you did when you started with. I did not realize that. Anyway, that's a different picture. I mean, I'll sell more things if I provide more, to more people. So that's okay. It's just people already don't like some of the appearance, and I'm glad people are using them. They
Yeah.
like to use them, but
Yeah, I
that's-
think I would want almost a max limit to an extent, because you don't want, I don't know.
Well, I think so.
Like-
You're never going to measure it the right way if not. You never
500,
have a
or,
baseline.
are they gonna end up with 500 or
They might-
1,000?
they might
Then
have
it's
a-
really,
They might have
Jumpy.
their own guidelines, and that'd be something to check into.
yeah.
All in all, I mean, the scooter program is not a huge
Besides
deal
the
or anything. It's just
population.
like,
Yeah.
well, shoot. I mean, we're not going to get accurate data if they keep moving they're moving the pole all the time. So
Possibly ask them, okay, how many do you have in Wichita? How many do you have
Atchison.
in Topeka?
Atchison, they got them up
Yeah, how many
there.
you have in Atchison?
at
That
this
kind of
rate,
thing.
they've each got 4,000 now.
Yeah, well, if we can compare our data to the data from others, especially if we can find a city that's the same size as ours, then we can make a comparison and say, well, how come you've given us, 400, and this other city over here that has the same number, about the same number of
kinda
people as us,
irritates me.
and they've only
Yeah.
got 150,
I don't want to
something like that.
Well, what do you think about
But I
capping
mean,
at 200?
at the same time, it's like they said,
that fine?
you give them the product, they'll use the product. And tell you the truth, I don't see a problem with that, until it gets unmanageable from our point of view.
Yeah, if they're everywhere, all over the place.
Yeah,
And they are getting that way now. Yeah, it's like, well, no wonder. Is that possible to cap it at 200? Say, guys, stop. I'll defer to everybody else, but that's
Well,
just my
and
question.
that says maybe you need to check with them and say, maybe they have a number and they just didn't.
We can pass that feedback along to
See?
Bird. We didn't include that in our memorandum of understanding.
Yeah.
We also are only 2 months into the program, so in some ways, I'm not sure if they're testing out what that ideal number is, because if I'm
Yeah.
just a numbers person, I look at the graph, I'm seeing the use is down, but the numbers are up if we're just going to the end, so perhaps there is a leveling out, there's some sort of ideal number for them where the scooters they have are.
That
That
It
could
may
be
be
what
not
they're
a big
trying to
deal.
find.
That's my
Yeah.
point, though. 8 weeks in, and we've quadrupled the amount of scooters from what they said they were going to give us. So anyway, I'll shut up. But that's you know what I think about it.
As the
Makes
weather
sense.
change, I think the usage is gonna definitely decline.
oh, yeah.
And then they may
How-
just pick them up during that time.
May even get more during the fall when the weather's
the
kind of
nice?
a
Right.
lot nicer, you don't have to worry about sweating as much. But come winter, that first chunk of ice on the ground or snow,
Yeah, you won't see
I
that.
don't
you'll see them go
hardly
down.
anyone would use them in the winter, but I don't know.
What I'd like to know is, how do we know when there's injuries like that? Was this reported through Bird, or did it get reported to the city by somebody?
So I asked the chiefs, I asked the police chief and the fire chief, what incidents have we had, sort of as a regular update.
Right, so they call 911, I guess is how the ones on there, and why you'd see a fire, not a police, is police don't respond to every injury accident, and
Okay.
fire does, for the most part, so
Okay.
that's how we would.
Well, I think it's good to know that on risk level.
Right.
How many
yeah.
injuries we
Yeah,
have.
and let people out there, yeah, know.
I mean, I'm surprised there's only one listed here,
Yeah.
because most of the riders were new. So
The-
that
They
surprises me.
They must have good
Injuries.
balance.
Do we have any details on the complaints that were called into them, the 13 that were called into them? Do they give you feedback on what those complaints were?
I
Probably
can
not.
certainly probe further. I asked which ones were from riders and which ones were from residents or businesses, and they said about half.
Gotcha, okay.
So riders can complain and say, this scooter wasn't charged, I only went 4 blocks and then it died, the handle isn't working correctly. So that includes the rider experience and local people with complaints or concerns.
Yeah.
The only recommendation I have is definitely setting a cap.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
All in favor of 200, say aye, let's go.
yeah, yeah. And
Well,
like
they
I
might-
said, I'd like to know what.
They
bird
might be
scooters-
looking for that point of diminishing
Right.
returns. Okay,
Might
we've got
be.
this many, they're not all
Yeah.
getting used, we're not getting our money's worth out of it, and they'll pull back.
And that's what, yeah, maybe
might
Mrs. Holler can find out from them and say what,
Yeah.
what are you looking
Like I
at?
said,
Or
you
the
know,
other
they're just looking
cities,
for,
like you said.
okay,
Yeah, when do
we're
they
not
make that
making
decision
money.
to
Yeah.
actually, drop another 50 off? Yeah.
I could definitely
So-
ask Bird what their plan is, right? I think that's what we're looking for. Is the current around 200 their maximum? Are they gonna increase it till they hit that ideal level?
Yeah, it is.
I kept thinking I saw
It's,
more.
and it's not you, you guys are fine. I'm just like, oh, of course they're doing this, so. Anyway.
But 6,000 miles is a lot. 6,239 to be exact.
Thank you for the feedback.
Great how
Thank
the
you
picture
very
of
much
these
for
ones here,
gathering that
they all look
information.
spanking clean and new and pretty.
They take a beating out there.
I bet they, yeah, especially when they fall down constantly.
Yeah. Thank you, Mrs. Holler.
Oh,
Did you have?
do they pick them up every day? Was that in the contract?
It's not in the contract that they go
Okay.
through every day. I've seen them fairly frequently. If you're downtown, you can usually see the truck. They're marked by, they have multiple scooters in the back of the truck. I've seen them set them up in various locations. I don't know if anyone else is.
Yeah, I
see
drive
them
downtown a
downtown.
lot. I see them like reset up. and
Yeah, they're going
nice.
down my street. I told my wife, oh, there goes one. They're right over there.
I was curious. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next
Don't get so
up.
excited,
I
Ann.
know. Yeah, this is your first one. Presentation of proposed 2023 operating budget and the 2023-2027 capital improvements program.
Pass that around.
Sure.
Oh, we got handouts, good.
We do.
They don't have to.
Madam Mayor and Commission, tonight I will present an overview of the city manager's proposed 2023 operating budget and the 2023 to 2027 Capital Improvements Program, or the CIP. Traditionally, the city manager provides an overview on the study session before the day-long budget hearings. Those budget hearings, as a reminder, are on July 15th. Start at 8:30 in this room. They're open to the public. Your books will be available next Friday, or this Friday.
This Friday.
This Friday, so you'll have about a week with those. We'll also have a draft budget online for the public to see. We also print a copy for the library and print a copy for the city clerk's office. So what I will do tonight is go through the highlights of the budget. I'll touch on taxation, I'll touch on expense and revenues, I'll touch a little bit on the CIP, and touch on the considerations that went into creating or drafting the budget in advance of that meeting on the 15th. So, start from the beginning and go through my sheets. Okay, so the budget overview. The 2023 operating budget is balanced as required by law and builds on the city's goal to provide high-quality services while maintaining sound financial standing. The budget increases in property valuation combined with modest growth and other revenue sources has given the city the ability to take action to reduce the burden on taxpayers. The proposed budget includes the following measures in relations to property taxes and utility rates specifically. The budget has a 1 mil decrease to city-supported services levy. The budget freezes current refuse rates, and the budget freezes current sanitary sewer rates. Infrastructure and amenities also continue to drive the formulation of the annual budget. In 2023 includes the following: more than $4.5 million in city funds dedicated to roadway improvements, a new roof for the Riverfront Community Center, increased trails funding, SWAT and police equipment replacements, and the license plate reader system, among many other items. I'll talk a little bit more in a second about the mill rates and the decrease in the mill rate and how that's possible and what that means for taxpayers. And then I do want to just briefly touch on the freeze of refuse rates and the freeze of sewer rates. As a general practice, it is not a great idea to have sustained rate freezes because costs go up. Those are both enterprise funds, meaning those are funded exclusively by user rates or utility fees. Combination of reducing expenses, some salary savings, and prudent management over the last couple of years has allowed us to do that while still maintaining our full workload and a capital program for each of those two funds. Budget development considerations. What does staff take into account in creating the city manager's proposed budget? First and foremost, it's direction and feedback of the governing body. That takes place in goal setting session. That takes place in study sessions and meetings over the first 6-7 months of the year. That takes place due to interaction with individual commissioners, both on the record, both casual conversations, and dealing with individuals of the governing body. Budget development consideration next was the possibility of current increases in sales tax revenue leveling off if the recession conditions follow the current historic inflation and supply-demand challenges. The city has definitely a trend of a heavy reliance on sales tax, which is more volatile than property taxes, but it does reduce reliance on property taxes while creating a potential point of vulnerability if economic conditions curb consumer spending. As you'll see in a minute, 47% of the general fund is funded by sales tax revenue, which has increased a little bit over the last couple years as we dropped our mill rate last year and have proposed to drop it even further this year. The next consideration was determining the nature of observed price increases across the board in regards to forecasting for everything from contractual services, mechanical equipment, fuel, chemicals, and road materials. Roberta, our finance director, and I struggle with what is transitory, what is here to stay, what's the new normal, what's the right number for a lot of these items. Another point I want to bring up is investing heavily in a new compensation program for the Leavenworth Fire Department. I will talk more about that as we move through this today and then on the 15th. Considerations: continuing the conservative budgeting and spending practices directed by the City Commission to reach and maintain a budget reserve goals to prepare the city for potential challenges over the next 12 to 24 months. In your budget packet that you'll be able to pick up this Friday, I've included a memorandum from our financial advisor. It basically just hits the highlights of having a strong reserve position. I won't delve into this too much today, but he notes as part of his memo that the city's 33.5% of revenue, which is our available fund balance, is healthy and ahead of the city's formal policy, but below the national AA2 median, our credit rating. A trend of declining reserves to levels lower than peers could lead to negative credit pressures. The next consideration in the budget was creating an employee compensation plan designed to make the city competitive in recruiting and retaining employees across the board. Ensuring adequate coverage of employee health and welfare and retirement expenses. And then finally, how to account for potential changes in the economic condition and trends after the budget is adopted. You have to keep in mind that most of the work in forecasting expenses and revenues is done in the first quarter and second quarter of this year, anticipating what conditions will be in place next year. Next, I'll move into revenue highlights. As I mentioned before, and this provides a little more detail, the city experienced an increase in initial assessed valuation from for about $243.7 million in 2021 to $272.1 million in 2022, an increase of 11.65 on average. At the proposed lowered mill rate of 25.658 for city-supported services, that increased valuation will generate an additional $484,688. Of those funds, the general fund will receive an additional $449,000 over 2022, $51,000 going to the recreation fund, $1,200 and $1,500 going to the fire and police pension funds respectively. And we were able to decrease approximately $18,000 the amount that goes into the bond and interest fund, primarily because of refinancing general obligation bonds in 2021. The city was able to lower interest rates and annual debt service payments. I've included a chart on the next page. This gets into a little bit of detail. I'm trying to keep it high level, but I think this is important. So if you look at the total net increase in valuation, the number is $880,466. That is much more than the number I mentioned on the previous page, so I'll tell you how we got there. First of all, by reducing the ad valorem tax rate by 1 full mil, the city is essentially giving back 31% of that increase in property tax revenue. Additionally, $229,664 increase is due to new improvements. That's new homes, that's vacant buildings or houses that are now occupied, and that's change in use, something that went from one use to another that increased the tax liability. So 57% of the new revenue comes from, would go to either the 1 mil decrease and new improvements created throughout the year. A small amount, $15,415, is rebated back to property owners who have made improvements to their properties. So that leaves this line right here, $363,405. That's the increase in property taxes attributed or contributed by existing properties. A rough estimation is that about 75% of property is residential. So if you take that, that gets you to $272,553. That is the increase in property tax attributed to existing residential property. Leavenworth is about 50% rental. Those rental properties are businesses. So if you cut that in half, simple math, the increase in ad valorem property taxes with the 1 mil decrease attributed to owner-occupied homes using the math here, and this isn't exact, but it's pretty close. It's about $136,277. Moving on to revenue highlights, focusing on sales tax. Sales tax includes local and countywide sales tax and local and countywide compensating use tax. Compensating use tax is internet sales. They're budgeted to be 4.5% higher than our actual 2021s. We don't have actual 2022 data, generating an additional $756,000. Keep in mind, all 4 categories do not go to the general fund. Countywide sales tax and countywide compensating use tax goes to the capital improvements budget, and 1/4 of the city's local sales tax goes to the capital improvements budget. There's been a 5-year trend of an annual increase of about 4.62%. Therefore, the 4.5% included in the budget, we believe, is a conservative estimate. The increase in sales tax will be allocated as follows: approximately $490,000 to the general fund, $11,000 to the economic development fund, $188,000 to the capital improvements projects, which is our capital budget, and $67,000 to TIF funds. Those are funds created by businesses that we have a contractual agreement with to refund those funds based on improvements in their production. Before we move on to the next one, again, 4.5 is conservative based on what we've seen, but we do have a little bit of hesitation based on what could be slowed consumer spending toward the end of this year and next year. However, we felt comfortable with that number given the city's strong reserve position. And we can also pivot throughout the year, which we're pretty adept at doing as we see the numbers come in. We get monthly sales tax data from the state, and so we can make those adjustments through the year. Talking about reserves, the general fund includes a budgeted reserve of $6.859 million, which is available to support the unanticipated expenses or underperforming revenues, one I just spoke about. The 2023 budgeted reserve represents 31.7% of the general fund, which is above the city's reserve target of 16.67%. Just a quick note on this 16.67%. We put that in place about 5 years ago. We didn't have a reserve target, and that was our starting point to establish one. Given the current economic climate, that is woefully inadequate. And so at some point here after budget season, I assume that we'll bring back a budget reserve policy for an update to the City Commission.
Good.
While budgeting use of reserves in a national recession is common, the management team has not elected to change our reserve position at this time, as was reinforced, I mentioned in the letter from our financial advisor, and in 2022 by Moody's Investor Services. A stable and healthy reserve is critical to maintaining the city's AA2 bond rating. Expense highlights. Gas, diesel, tires, and batteries and chemicals are budgeted to increase a total of 33.5% or $308,631 from the 2022 budget. Utilities are budgeted to increase an additional 7.23% or $102,000 across all city operations. There are modest increases in the CAPERS and KP&F pension systems of about $18,243. City staff has capped our budgeted increase for health insurance at 8%, which is approximately $174,000. What that means is if our renewal rate comes in above that, we will change our plan to get under that budget number. So we are tying ourselves to an 8% increase. If you've talked to any school district, county, city, 8% is pretty low, but we feel we can get there. We are pretty active in our management with our healthcare provider. And if we can't, there are some options that we have on the table. So I'm going to talk about the next item just for a minute, the implementation of a fire department step system, as well as current changes to increase the minimum salary to $40,000, and further efforts to guard against compaction will increase the budget approximately $360,000. We plan to implement this, so I'll talk about it in a minute, at the beginning of the year, rather than the employee compensation, which we do at the middle of the year. The fire chief and I will speak about this on the 15th more, but here's why. The city has done this for the police department as staffing became a huge challenge. We have, I say started to, the chief will tell you, have seen for a while the same thing starting to happen in the fire department. We are not competitive with the region. We have good people. We need to make that investment in the community, and that's what this budget proposes to do. So it increases salary based on time with the department, years in service, and then creates a plan going forward that would, pending completing certain milestones, increase salary as they move through the ranks of the fire department. I think it's overdue, but we finally have the resources to be able to dedicate to the fire department employees. So I want to show you 4 graphs just to sort of illustrate a few, I think, important parts for the city. So general fund, the city has a general fund of approximately $21.8 million. Of the revenue for the general fund, as I mentioned before, this has increased a little bit over time. Sales tax now accounts for 47% of funding of the general fund. Property taxes at 21%. Franchise fees, and then we have a few license permits, other little pieces. So that's where the general fund, how it's funded by revenue source. Here's how that breaks down in the general fund. Public safety or police and fire is 67% of the general fund. Those costs, as I mentioned, in salary are increasing, equipment increasing, vehicles, health insurance, pension are all increasing for public safety, which takes about 67% of our general fund. However, sometimes the general fund is what people think of as the city's budget. The city is much larger and much more complex than just the general fund. In 2023, the proposed budget includes revenue of $50.38 million, and here's the type. Sales tax at this point includes 35%, property tax at 17%. What you don't see in here is charges for service includes refuse and sewer rates. Intergovernmental includes federal funds that come through Planters 2, through the voucher system. So this is total revenue from all sources, much of which goes from user fees, intergovernmental funds, and those types of revenue sources. But it gives an idea of how big the city's operation is in comparison to just the general fund. Expenses by function. A couple things to note here. You'll see that our expenses outpace our revenue in this by about $10 million. That is not a typo. So the city has budgeted as an expenditure ARPA funds, So those will have been received this year, so they won't come out, show as a revenue next year. Federal funds exchange dollars, we've talked about how we're banking those federal dollars sent to us for the 4th Street project. So those have been accumulating year after year after year, but if we expend 2 or 3 million next year, that's why the expenditures look so much higher. And then, of course, stormwater, the commission is about to consider a couple large projects, Second and Chestnut, and some other large stormwater projects. So there's a balance in those funds. Those will be expended next year. So that's why you see so much more in expenditures than revenue. A slide we create every year is the value of your city of Leavenworth tax dollars. This just focuses on property tax. And this does include a 1 mil reduction, which of course is up to the commission. That's just what's in the proposed budget. We increased it from a market value home of $150,000 because I don't know how many of those exist anymore. We still kept it pretty modest with $175,000. So going through the calculations, a resident of the city of Leavenworth would pay to the city. Now they pay more to the county or more to the school district. $43.03 per month, and those are some of the items that are funded: police protection, snow removal, street repairs, the community center, animal control, and this is not a exhaustive list of all city services at that point. We always include a slide every year on employee compensation to tell you what the proposed budget includes. The 2023 employee compensation plan is to recommend a 5% across the board cost of living increase for employees, but not implemented till mid-year. While still below inflation, the compensation plan is in line with those being provided by most municipalities in the region. This will also allow us to move the minimums as we attempt to hire our workers in the field. We will increase the minimum salary as we move everybody else of the existing employees. And as was previously mentioned, there's a significant investment in the fire department included in the 2023 proposed budget. The plan seeks to address an accelerating trend in the region related to starting pay and pay ranges. Fire plan would take place, as I mentioned, in January rather than mid-year. Firefighters at all levels would still be eligible for the mid-year cost of living increase. We didn't want them to receive this in January and at the expense of the standard raise at the middle of the year. Raises the minimum, takes into account longevity, time and grade for increases for existing staff. The CIP, which we'll talk about first on the 15th, is allocated for a number of, this is the capital improvements program, is allocated for a number of bond financed and pay-as-you-go projects, buildings, equipment needs, operating transfers, and infrastructure items. Projects included in the CIP are prioritized by staff evaluation of operations, equipment, building, and infrastructure conditions, along of course with commission priorities and direction. This is not just a pipe replacement project, but this is also the Havens Park restroom and the Subby Park restroom and the trails allocation and those types of things directed by the commission primarily through goal setting and conversations. The CIP is comprised of 3 revenue sources: 1/4 of the city's local sales tax, the city's portion of the countywide sales tax, and general obligation bonds issued for the city for their annual road maintenance project. The CIP also includes information for enterprise funds, sewer and refuse, which are funded by user fees. The 5-year capital improvements plan, which you'll see soon, is probably close to 12 to 15 pages. I'm going to just hit a couple summary notes. Replacing the roof over the main portions of the Riverfront Community Center. The roof is 30 years old. Continuing debt service on a number of city facilities, animal control, projects, equipment, including the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park. As we mentioned, Havens and Stubby Park are going in this year, but those are paid for over 3 years, along with the splash part in the Stubby Park shelter. This is all up for discussion for the commission, but what's in the proposed budget. The first year funding for the license plate reader system, multiple information technology upgrade projects, year 1 of a total replacement of all City Hall HVAC, hydronic, and mechanical condensate plumbing with year 2 in 2024, and an increase in the citywide trails allocation from $30,000 to $45,000. Some of this you saw in the ARPA funding, and that's a discussion we can have when we get to the 15th, is some of this better suited for ARPA, which then would free some dollars in the CIP, but that's a discussion we can have on the 15th. So for tonight, my conclusion and mill rate recommendation. The recommended 2023 operating budget and 2023 CIP reflect a cautious approach to the fluctuations in local, state, and federal economy due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting recession, increase in interest rates, inflation, all those pressures. The recommended budget proposes to invest heavily in the city's infrastructure, to invest in employee development and workforce stabilization, while making modest enhancements in parks and recreation, community resources, and city capabilities. This says with the flat mill rate, that is incorrect. That is a mill rate reduction of 1 mill for city-supported services. And additionally, careful consideration of expenses in previous years that has allowed the city to reach a stable reserve position. You will see on here that there is nothing for the 2023 library. They are having a meeting on Thursday to submit their mill rate to us, so we will have that for the book on Friday, and we will have that for the discussion. But above that, you can see the city's subtotal decreases 1 mil for the 2023 proposed budget. So again, your budget books will be available this week. I am certainly available for questions. This was not put together by just me, and we'll hit everybody as we go through budget discussions. But we have a finance director doing this for the first time, and so she's put in a tremendous amount of work. We hope that you like the new format that the budget has. I think it's a little more comprehensive. I think easier to maybe see how the money comes and goes. Everybody has their spin on how they view the budget, and I think we ended up with what's a really quality work project. So if you have any top line questions, I'm happy to address those. Otherwise, the detailed discussion we would save for the 15th, and I'm of course available for the commission at any time to answer any questions you may have.
This is open to the public, right?
Yes, yep, and it will be online. The draft budget will be online for anybody to see, including the transmittal letter, which is my letter summarizing what's in the budget.
So, Mr. Kramer, real quick question. You mentioned the fire department compensation package. You said we're not competitive today. When you guys came up with your number, what was that based off of?
So a couple different things. It was based firstly on implementing a new system. The system being something that's not a one-time adjustment. A system that's something that similar to other public safety entities, which over time allows a firefighter to predict better where they can reach in their career. So that was the most important thing, is it was lacking a system, and it wasn't just throwing money willy-nilly, and so that was number one. Number two, it really did come down to implementing it. How much could we do in the first year, based on what this new system would then cost in year 2, year 3, year 4. Sure. So that's not a very detailed answer to I think what you're looking at.
But that's what, that kind of answers.
Right, and so we didn't just pick a number, and I know that's not what you're asking, but that was where we went. We spent a lot of time on existing firefighters. We did increase the minimum a decent amount, but the majority of this goes to those firefighters who have been here and have worked at the city of Leavenworth in an attempt to retain them and the talent that we have here. So the system, I think, was key, and then it was available funding after that.
Okay. More advantageous for advancement and stuff like that is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Where can you be in 10 years or 5 years if you stay with the city of Leavenworth, besides just your annual raise? What kind of benchmarks can you do? How do we reward training? How do we reward hitting career benchmarks? How to reward promotions, more importantly, more effectively? So a lot of work, I know he's here, a lot of work by Chief Gary Birch and his staff, probably 3 or 4 or 5 different models that we've worked through on how to do that. We did send a memo to all fire department employees last week to let them know. I don't want them to read about this in the paper.
Right.
But it is pending commission approval of the funding mechanism, and then we'll roll out the plan with them later this fall.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Kramer, are there other departments that will be having to look at doing the same sort of thing? I mean, police, fire, okay.
We'll be looking at all of them.
Yeah, so we just finished this year, right now, actually, we just processed the mid-year pay adjustments. We finished the implementation of the last classification and compensation study. We did that in 2018 and implemented it over We initially ended up doing years 4 and 5 this year, but implemented it over 4 years. So that's the next step. You got to do it again. You got to see where the market has moved at each position. A couple other quick adjustments, and I know I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with personnel, but we've changed a lot of the minimum qualifications. We're seeing this in the private industry where we used to be able to get fully trained employees. We used to get certifications, CDLs, 5 years of experience in this or this or this. And we've shifted, and I think you'll see it in the budget in some training allocation where we want more people, good people that we can get in and train. And so that's a big shift we've made. And then I think the 5% is below inflation. Roberta was pushing me higher, but that does represent the biggest investment in employee pay that the city would have made in a number of years, just because of budget constraints. So that's another way that we're trying to do that, with corresponding increases in the minimums with those increases to existing employees.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
Not tonight, I'll
Yeah.
hold mine for the
Right.
actual meeting.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kramer. Good report.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roberta.
Okay. Did you, Mr. Kramer, did you have anything else?
I do not.
Mr. Stan? Commissioner
Paul,
Keel?
Paul,
Hello.
splash pad, my bad, sorry.
What?
Oh,
Splash Pad, they're out there working. As I mentioned, it's the firm that does them throughout the region, and so they finished the ones they were on, and so they're working. We still will have it open this year. I'm sure it's going to be later than we wanted to, but it'll be open this year. It was a tough timeline with getting materials.
Yeah,
The new water meter, actually, that we had to order, a lot of the piping and the materials and the concrete has been slower to come, so.
and have there been any wrecks on Ohio Street? Right there where where they doing the work at?
I don't have an answer for you too on
Okay.
that, but I haven't heard of one, but I'll check.
Well, because it's like where they're doing the work at, like it's blocks off one side of the street, then on the opposite end, like if
Not
you.
a lot of traffic on there unless you're cutting through, I guess, or
Yeah.
going to the
well,
park, but
you
yeah, I know what
don't
you're talking
travel
about.
like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I'll
that's
check,
all.
I'll
Just
check
trying to-
traffic control
yeah.
out there, sure.
I used to live up there. I know what traffic is up there. It's not fun getting out of there.
Some of those other side streets.
Up there on where where it becomes LeCompton,
Oh.
in the snow. Ooh. But it's not snowing
Don't
now.
talk about Lecompton,
Yeah,
the worst street in town.
I know.
Oh, yeah, that part of it too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have anything additional?
No, I hope everybody had a great, safe holiday, and go on from there. Let's have a great rest of the week.
That's good, you're positive, that's good. Okay,
Yeah, for those who is not aware of Mother Thomas, she was a resident of Leavenworth, Kansas for 93 years, and she just recently passed. And she is the mother of Pentecostal Church of the Apostolic Faith. Visitation will be July 7th, 2022, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And the celebration of life will be July 8th, 2022 at 10 a.m., 1701 5th Avenue. She was a mentor to so many people in the community, a leader, and a mother figure to so many. She's also the wife of the late Elder Greg Thomas, the church. So,
thank you.
and God bless.
God bless. God bless you too. No, I don't have anything today. I'm looking forward to the budget hearings and
I do.
I have a lot more questions for them. Thank you.
Heart and prayers go out to the victims of, the families of the victims in Chicago during the shootings over
Yeah,
the weekend, so.
too many
that's
shootings over the weekend.
Too bad,
Yeah.
really.
Okay, now, I didn't have anything, just have a great rest of the week.